Okay, so this is probably 8 to 10. Not sure exactly where we are as far as the No Damns Given podcast.
I think it's 10. Is it 10?
I think it is right at 10. We've, but hell, it don't matter. We're actually back at where we started today. We've got Kevin Hilton, brewer extraordinaire, and just got back from helping us open up in Atlanta, GA. How was it?
Oh, it was almost overwhelming. It was great though. We got a lot of positive feedback. A lot of people want to work with us and really interested in the farm and our whole concept and everything. So it's a little intimidating, just the size of it compared to Southwest Georgia down here. But it's going to be great. And like I said, it's just almost overwhelming with the amount of accounts and everything up there. But our distributor worked great with us. We had some really good people showing us around all the best accounts. We had a little event over at the Porter, and that was probably the most beautiful cellar I've ever seen. They just had some of the best beers that I've never seen in person before. So
beautiful because it was there was a big selection, or beautiful.
Oh yeah.
Just
the rarity of things they had in there, and the quality of beers that they have. They work with another distributor who's very well known throughout both the States and Europe as being one of the premier distributors. So they get kind of the choice beers of the world, and like I said, some stuff I've never seen before in person. So it was a great sight to see.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, Atlanta's obviously the craft beer mecca. So as far as of the 68 breweries or 70 some odd breweries in the state, I think almost all of them are in Atlanta. I mean, we're outside. Omaha's outside. Mm-hmm. There's Macon's got several, but what is it? 70-80% is probably sitting right within the city limits. So they. But comparatively, there's 6-7 million people there. So there's a lot of taps. We sold to 646 taps last year, or 646 accounts. So that's both our on-premise accounts as well as our off-premise accounts. But I was just looking at the account list there. It's thousands.
Oh yeah.
Thousands upon thousands.
Yeah, we barely scratched the surface. Luckily, again, our distributor did a great job showing us to some of the more high-profile, high-volume accounts. So we're excited to be in those. But yeah, it's just so many people to get to, mm-hmm. And being 3 hours away, we're gonna have to make several trips to, kind of make that. Face-to-face contact with all these these accounts. So, like I said, overwhelming, but it's a great problem to have. Super excited to be up there, and means we can brew a ton more beer. So that always makes me happy.
For you, from the brewing standpoint, what does success mean when you get that big and we're trying to go to that many people? How do you yourself say? How do you yourself grade on success? I mean, we're football guys, so we like scores,
right?
So we like to see how we're doing. So how do we score that?
Yes, as far as scores go, I feel like that's a little bit more of those app-driven numbers. The Beer Advocate and that kind of stuff that I should be paying more attention to, but. I just don't really have time for it, honestly, and it'll make you scratch your head sometimes too. So, really, success for me, as far as expanding into a large market like that, is really keeping our quality where it is right now, and not compromising by taking shortcuts to make the beer or making more beer. Keeping our same integrity of everything that we do, from the mash in to carbonation. And applying that just on a bigger scale. So that's to me is more success than whatever scores we get on any of those apps or anything like that.
Oh yeah, and I think we preached from the beginning, and that's been, well, there's several different reasons why we haven't ramped up with the way most people deem breweries to ramp up is with multiple beers. We've tried to ramp with a larger volume, maintaining the same quality with the beers that we have and doing it the best we can, while also trying to convert as much of the inputs to South Georgia grown. And I hope that story resonates in Atlanta. I mean, what do you think?
It was. I mean, that was what, every time I walked into an account, that was what everybody wanted to hear, and just conveying the steps we take to put those farm grown ingredients into every single beer that we make really resonated with people. I was mostly in Decatur on the first day, and they had a lot of farm to table restaurants and community driven restaurants and bars and things like that, and that's exactly what they're looking for. There, like you said, there's so many breweries up there in Atlanta, and they really don't have that rural kind of
appeal, feel.
Yeah, exactly. You just can't do it up there like you can down here. I know there's some breweries that are working with some farms, and but to have the actual farm and be working with farmers that are local is it's the next level of commitment to quality, and that's such a huge selling point for us.
What are their Trip? How many farmhouse breweries in the nation? 3?
I don't know in the nation. So I know there's Jester
one in
King.
Texas.
Yeah, Jester King in Texas is probably the closest to us west, and then
North Carolina,
Blackberry Farms in Tennessee.
That's right.
But they're very corporate, and I don't want to make anybody mad, but we were rural. Really, we were rural farmers who then decided to put in a brewery. So it's a little different than what their business model was. There's another, and I'm blanking on the name, in Virginia, that's very similar to what we are. I think they're 500 to 1,000 acres. So we're right at, we fluctuate. I sold a farm, so we're right in between 400 and 700 acres. And we're actually looking at another farm, so we'll end up being closer to 700 here, probably in the second quarter of this year. But our song and mantra has been, farmers and brewers working together. Did you get a chance to talk anything about our barrel age project that we want to do?
I didn't delve into that too heavily. I kind of teased it a little bit, but we're still in the early stages of doing that. We have some things planned, and we've got some barrels on the way, but those things take time and a lot of effort. So I didn't want to overpromise anything. It's definitely something that we're going to be working on here in the next month or so. Going forward.
Can you explain barrel aging and why it's interesting or different, and also what in the time? I mean, the thing to me is the time and effort that you have to put into it, and then somewhat of a mystery of what you're going to get out of it. So
yeah, for sure. So kind of the more straightforward barrel aging is your darker imperial beers that you're going to put into mainly spirit barrels, and those don't have too much of a residency time. There are some people that go a year or two in those things, but typically they're more like anywhere from 2 to 6 months. Get some oak flavor, get some of that spirit flavor into the beer, and get it out. Otherwise, they just get too hot and they taste like liquor. So that's just a little too much a lot of times there. But
do they re-ferment when they go back in?
They a little bit. So on the spirit aging, those imperial beers, they'll have a tiny bit of re-fermentation, but not a whole lot. I mean, any kind of pickup you're going to get as far as alcohol is mainly going to come from drawing that the spirits out of the wood. So that's you get a little bit of character from that, but you're mainly getting character from the wood and the spirits that were in the wood. When you're talking about long-term sour aging, you have a very long fermentation time, and it depends on what kind of cultures you're working with, but for the most part, you're going to age from, I'd say bare minimum is 8 months, all the way up to 3-5 years, and that's just because you're working with different microbes that metabolize sugars differently. So, and they also metabolize carbohydrates and things like that regular yeast can't consume. So, it just is a longer process. But what it does is it imparts a lot more complex and unique flavors into the beer that you can't get just from your run-of-the-mill brewer's yeast. That's something I'm definitely interested in. I've worked on that at previous breweries, and I just love kind of the art / science / luck of the draw of it. So I'm excited to get back into it. Yeah.
So a lot of super interesting flavor profiles after a long period of time, and hopefully it's not spoiled. Is that a good way to?
Yeah.
Is that a good way to describe it?
They don't spoil so much as like if you get what you're really trying to do is avoid acetobacter, acetic acid, which is vinegar, that flavor profile. Once it gets to that, it's just it's no good. But I have never had a beer actually spoil. If you treat it right,
yeah, he's bragging.
Yeah.
if you treat it right and you keep
you love on it.
Exactly.
Little sweet nothings.
Yeah.
What Kirchner say? Play a little music for it. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Hell yeah.
So would it be spirit barrels that you're?
Yeah. So we have a couple barrels from 13th Colony that we've been waiting on. We'll evaluate them before we actually use them, just because they've been sitting around for a month or two now. And typically you want to refill them as fast as possible, or else that whole acetic thing will happen, because oxygen will get into the wood, and then the oxygen will be pulled out into the beer, and then that's what causes your acetic acid. So,
when we leave this podcast, we're going to fill them.
I wish. And then we need a few more little toys, but we're almost there. February for sure. We'll start filling everything, and we've been talking to other local wineries and distilleries in the area to purchase their barrels. We want to keep it in the family, and really take that terroir to the next level as far as the flavor that imparts from other local businesses that are doing similar projects.
Yeah, that's awesome. South Georgia family, baby.
Yeah.
Right here.
Yeah.
All right. So today also we have Collin Cooper with our taproom manager. And Collin, what are you drinking, Collin?
Today I'm drinking the Berry Goza. This is actually the newest batch of Berry Goza that we just canned. Super awesome tasting. It's probably one of our better Berry Gozas we've made. Not saying that the other ones were bad, but this one's...
It's the Berry Project.
Yeah, the Berry Project.
It's the Berry Project.
Yeah, it's really spot on. The Berry Goza to me has a special place in my heart. When I first started working here, we had to process and vacuum seal all of these blackberries and blueberries that went into this beer when they were harvested. So
you're saying that was painful.
Yeah. For about 3 weeks.
It might have been painful.
Yeah.
Wait
Vacuum
till
sealed.
we get those peaches.
I know. Vacuum sealed about 3,500 pounds of blackberries and blueberries.
Or watermelons. Or satsumas.
Loquats.
Or loquats. Yeah. I'll tell you, we did loquats one night. That is It was fun. It's not easy.
It's a little labor
It's
intensive.
a little labor intensive. There's a reason there's not there's not like a loquat juice at the grocery store. They got to get all the cyanide out of it.
Yeah, you got to get those pits out.
Yep.
So Berry Project, Mr. Belusco. Where does that come from?
We're not going there.
All
I'm not throwing anybody under the bus.
It's not under the bus.
We're just.
So there's another beer that's called Hop Project, right?
Yes, there is a hot project. It's up at Yazoo.
We can give them kudos.
Yeah, man, they're good. I like.
Oh yeah, talk about sour programs. Those guys are embracing the funk
top
up there.
notch. Yeah,
But just the basics of it then.
they have a hot project where they change this. They change their hot profile from each iteration of the beer has a little different hop makeup, and it's never the same ever. And that's their whole thing. Like I remember, I really like 65 through 67 of their.
Connoisseur.
I remember. That was several years ago too. So, and I unfortunately I don't have I don't travel to Nashville too much, but it's nice. It's nice to taste their beers. They have a neat project. But it's never the same, and yep, they don't write down the recipes.
They don't write down the
recipes.
So I think
that's what I was told.
We do write down our recipes according to my brewers. Hopefully, we write our process manual. But we are a farm, and our blueberries and blackberries have various content of sugar depending on how wet or dry the year was, and also how many berries, the quality of the berries may vary. So actually the taste of the Berry Goza could vary from batch to batch. We've noticed that some batches are more fruity than others. Some probably have more blackberries, blueberries than they do the other types. So it might not be much different, but it is a little different. So
yeah, I'm waiting to taste the Hurricane Michael
version
of the Berry Goza.
Next year.
That's awesome. So Collin, you took over taproom management. Tell us what's going on in the taproom.
As being taproom manager, just trying to push the taproom as much as possible to try to get people in here as much as possible. We always have a good time when we have a big crowd. We have a lot of regulars that come in, but every now and then we get people that come in out of town that are just coming because they heard of a new brewery in Southwest Georgia. And as taproom manager, is trying to make sure that the quality of the taproom is the same throughout the year. So trying to get music and food in as much as possible, trying to get bigger events to come host their event here than, say, another event center of some type. So just trying to capitalize on everything that Albany has to offer and promote it through our beer and our tasting room.
Very good.
Yeah.
Got some good band schedule coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm always excited when Evergreen Family Band plays.
Oh, great band. Try to get in here as much as possible.
Yeah. A little bluegrass is good.
So how did we actually get you here?
I actually applied the first official days that we were open, December 7th of last year. I dropped off, got a pamphlet.
You were homeless?
I wasn't homeless. I had another job at the time. I wasn't quite homeless, even though I look homeless right now.
That's not what I meant.
But
sounds funny.
But yeah, I applied for the job. The only reason why I actually got accepted was the managers at the time who was working knew me from the restaurant industry and the food service industry. So I came by, got my pamphlet, and started December 8th, the day after we officially started.
Yeah, and he loved your awesome beard.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The beard varies all the time.
I was going to say, the evolution of that beard is
So
beautiful.
I think that's actually a good to move into. What did you say? We wanted his color of his beard to be the same color of the Georgia Common.
Oh, yeah.
I just thought that'd be neat.
If it just turned out that way.
Yeah. No, Eric, one day I came in, he was looking at the pilot system, and he was looking at the wart, and he looked at my beard, and he looked back, and he's like, we're almost there. It's almost the right color.
That's funny.
Go back in. Well, so Atlanta. So how? One of the things that has, I guess, plagued is not the right word. One of the things we've been thinking about a lot is how do we ramp up production. So tell people what goes into thinking about like our production schedule. And so we had the numbers guy, aka Sean Henley, look at what we think would be a good projection, but then it's all really a guess, isn't it?
Yeah, until you get a lot of empirical data, it is hard, just to know how you should package, whether there's a higher demand for kegs, and even in kegs, are people buying half barrels, they buying sixtels, how much packaged beer are we selling, and like I said, until we get some empirical data back, it's hard. So, I trust Sean and the numbers that he gives me, and just try to meet those numbers, and we adjust accordingly. One of the nice things about having the variety of some new tanks and the canning line and everything is to be able to adjust when we need to. So we can do that up until the day that we package, and we're essentially packaging on a Friday and shipping it on a Monday. So everything's still super fresh, but like I said, just trusting him to run the numbers, and if we have to adjust, we can always adjust.
Yeah, what goes in? I mean, like as far as your brewing process, y'all. I guess one of the things we're talking about was getting another pitch of yeast. So how does so it's everything from needing yeast to be able to use more fermenters to need more ingredients. I mean, those what are some of the drawbacks? I guess of and drawbacks aren't the right word. I guess we were talking right before. What I was trying to get to is breweries going into a huge market and then have it increasing your production because there's such cost, because the cost of goods sold are so high, and our margins, especially distributed margins, are can be relatively low. So we can overproduce in one area, and there's some risks there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and luckily we haven't run into that yet. In the next 6 months at least, I don't think that's anything that we got to worry about is overproducing. But yeah, I mean, it even starts, as early as.
So we're laughing about that, but let me explain. So having a good demand is a good thing.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the reason we're laughing, right?
Right. It's great to have that, and it keeps your beer super fresh too. Like, we don't want to have beer that's sitting in a warehouse for a month or two before it gets sold to the consumer. So, meeting those production demands without going super overboard will keep that product fresh, and will keep that quality high for our consumers. And like I said, we'll take the empirical data as we get it and translate it into how we package and things like that. But we're just gonna keep doing what we're doing, and from mashing to carbonation, we're gonna keep our processes the exact same, and just use the fermenters more often, and we have some more bright tank space, so that's helped us out a lot, and that'll help with production, and like I said, just keep everything fresh.
Yeah. So as far as we've ramped up our 4 or 5, 6 cores. If you look at the berry and the goza this year, so we're here. We're working on some other stuff.
We are working on a lot of stuff. So we already talked about the sour stuff a little bit. I got that going.
Make us salivate.
Yeah. So I mean, the first thing that's near and dear to my heart is that sour program, and we have a couple cultures going right now, and we'll evaluate those as we go, and blend to kind of make our house culture going forward, and that's super exciting to me. Again, those things are pretty far off. If I had to guess, earliest would be March of next year before we see one of those beers in package. But in the shorter term, we're working on a lot of we're ramping up research and development a lot. So we got a session IPA that's working right now. We're brewing a hazy IPA this weekend.
Both those make me smile.
Yeah.
We'll be available in the tap room.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that we're doing a little bit different, right, Collin?
Yeah, no, we actually have the whole other side of our second bar is probably just going to be dedicated to pilot and one-offs. Cleared out that jockey box the other day and cleaned the lines just for whenever we have one-offs and people want to try samples and just get everyone's opinion on it. You know, one of the big things with doing smaller batches like that is getting the public's opinion on it. You know, we can talk about it all day, but if the public doesn't like it, then you're going to have to start over.
Then it can just go in my personal.
Yeah.
I've got refrigerators.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, put it in my back.
But yeah, we're also we got some lager yeast in too, so we're going to do I've got a Maibach I'm working on and a Mexican lager, and we've been successful with our California ale yeast, and we've kind of filled that out. You know, the 6 beers that we're using now, or that we have on now, all have that California ale yeast. So, to get in, a little bit more variety, we need another strain, and that's what the R&D is all about, is kind of narrowing that down and seeing what works, and both financially and as a
So explain to me the yeast strains. I mean, I know that we create new types of beers with different types of yeast, but how do the strains within the different types of ale and stuff, how do they change the taste, or do they change the taste?
Oh yeah, for sure. It has there's a couple factors that go into it, but not to get too history nerdy, but most of the
make no bones about it, we're nerds, or at least I am.
So all
Mr. Belusco is pretty cool, but I'll take the nerddom.
So all these yeast have been cultivated over the last several hundred years. And until kind of the mid 1800s, they were all just whatever was local, wild to that region was what you got. And until they started kind of culturing them and selecting them for their positive traits, that's
been one of the funnest things about. Especially about brewery meetings. Not that I'm actually in there brewing, but talking about the ingredients and we're going to start here, and this is how we're utilizing it. And you guys are obviously ninjas at dealing with those things, and what a great concept to start. Start a little bit more in.
Both that and the raw wheat.
Maybe we just created something instead of a lupulin threshold. We created a rye threshold. So it's a whole new thing.
Trademark coming on.
Trademark, yeah.
Talk to a lawyer.
Yeah, honestly, our raw wheat is great too. It's
don't get hair started.
Oh, it's amazing. I eat that stuff by the handful. It's awesome. It's nice and soft and easy to work with, and still has a lot of flavor to it. And again,
his head just grew like 50 feet.
Well, he deserves it.
His head just grew like 50 feet.
You think he's watching?
Heck, no. He ain't gonna watch those.
He's farming.
What is that thing? What is a podcast? I don't know. Is it going up there?
A bunch of kids.
A bunch of kids ain't doing nothing.
Talking on microphones. I'm out here working in the heat.
Why don't y'all get out here and drive this tractor?
I need some help out here on the farm. Y'all got kids.
Yeah. Send them out.
Send them out here.
Send them out here. We did. Yeah. That's awesome. So, very good. Cheers.
Cheers to that.
Cheers to Harris.
Cheers
to Harris.
Cheers to Harris. What did Jennifer call it? The gentleman farmer.
Jennifer.
Jennifer. So where are we next, guys?
I don't know.
Where do we go? Where do we go from here?
Oh, I actually. So when you're talking about sours, I was looking. We have sheets.
Which we haven't followed at all today.
Not at all.
But I've taken a lot of notes.
But written on that sheet,
Yeah.
there was something that popped out at me, and so it was, is South Georgia ready for sour beer? And I started thinking about it, and I'm like, well, that's a good question for Kevin.
That's a good question for Kevin.
Well,
Or Collin.
Or Colin.
Or Collin. But
yeah,
Kevin.
he knows more about the the locals here, but as far as sours go, it's it can be anything from super barnyardy, funky, people that work on worked in farms growing up, they'll get a lot of that kind of reminiscent aromas from that. But it can also be super vinous that's almost like wine, and then once you put some fruit on top of it, it literally tastes like wine. One of my favorite things to do when I was a server was to go up to somebody, they would say, I don't drink beer, I only drink wine. Ask them, are you celiac? Is it an allergy? No. Okay, well, I'm just gonna bring you something. Just try it. Don't don't have any preconceived notions about it being a beer, and just watching their face turn from, kind of confused to kind of like that, and then next thing you know, you look over and they're on their third glass of it. So, once we get it in people's hands, they'll love it, and it's just a good kind of counter to what we've got with our clean beers right now. So I definitely think there is. And
so does the Goza style go well with farm to brewery, farmhouse brewery? Is that a good? Does that style mix well? I'm just trying to feed you a question.
Yeah, it's not as it's not
Sorry
as farmhousey as barnyardy as stuff with like Britannomyces and stuff like that is, but ours we have a really nice culture of lactobacillus, which is the souring agent. We have a really nice culture of that right now that almost does produce a little bit of that farmhouse funk to it, without being like a really funky beer like you would get with bread or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely along those lines, and I think when I think,
do you want to do a Brett beer? Is that next?
That's part of the cultures that we're working on right now, and
because that's what I just detected.
Oh yeah.
Brett's amazing. I love
I don't know what y'all heard, but I heard but what I'd really like to work with.
Yeah, and there's such a variety within the Brett family as well. I got three different. Like I said, I got three different cultures right now, and then I'm going to try to do 100% Brett fermented beer as well. We did a lot of that at the last place that I worked, and you have a little bit more variance in something like that. It's not quite as controlled, but when you do it and it's right, it's just a beautiful thing. And
so I think one of the things he alluded to is that the wine drinkers who. A lot of those are ladies, tend to like the Goza.
Oh, yeah.
You agree with that?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. We actually get a lot of people that come in and it's like, I don't like beer at all, but it's like, I drink wine. So usually we point them towards either the Goza or the berry Goza, especially the berry Goza because it does have that slight berry finish to it, slightly dry. Had a lot of people refer to it as like a dry rosé almost, is what they compare it to. But even then, I've had people, they're like, I like Corona with lime. And I give them the regular Goza, and they're like, it actually kind of reminds me of a Corona with lime, which to me has not even close to the same thing, but if they enjoy it, that's one of the big things. But I've had people, too, that say they don't like IPAs or they don't like beer at all, and they go right for the Scholli, and they love it. So they love that really like fruity, herbal taste and slight bitterness and dryness in the end that some people like, but some people don't. And it's surprising me that people that don't like beer actually right off the bat enjoy an IPA. So
That's cool.
Yeah. Well, thank God for those people.
Thank God. One of the things I've enjoyed, and I think one of the things we pushed, is try to get people to think about beer like they think about wine. Talking about being a history nerd, I think the history of beer as being a barbarian associated drink, as opposed to if you drink wine, you're very cultured and you're very sophisticated. There's actually a history of the world according to beer, and the guy who did the research on that goes back to Rome and how they took it is true that beer that wine travels much better than beer does. I mean, you can put it in a the bladder of some killed animal and cap it off, and you can take it all over the Middle East and all over the Northeast and all the way up to England, which is where Rome expanded to, and it's as good as it was when it was placed in there. The flasks are. And beer itself, if it becomes hot, then it spoils. So it was.
But 10,000 monks can't be wrong.
Think about how many lives those 10,000 monks saved by feeding people beer instead of the putrid water of the age. Mm-hmm. So it was a lifesaver. So it was a gift from God. But so part of the cultural significance of that is it has actually been pushed forward to now, where the Roman society thought that the wine was debonair, and that the Northerners that drank beer were somewhat bullish. Mm-hmm. So very cool. So
yeah, I think it's coming around a little bit, especially with how the craft beer world is being received now. There's so much craftsmanship and it's such an artisan thing to do now that it's not a mass-produced fizzy water that's going to get you inebriated anymore. It's something to enjoy after a day of hard work, I don't want to keep going back to sours, but you get such complexity out of those beers, and like you were alluding to before with the no beer is the same. I mean, it's the same with sour beers. Like, even if we use the same culture and the same recipe, the beer is going to do what it's going to do, and we just have to react to it and accept it, and the best thing we can do is either serve it straight or blend it, or if it's not acidic enough, add some fruit to it or something along those lines. But it's just, beer is not a barbaric thing just to get
and in my mind it's more, and maybe it's because I don't know as much about wine, but in my mind it's so much more complicated than wine is. I mean, we use more ingredients. There's more. The terroir for different organic products. So not just grapes, or not just hops, but barley, other flavoring ingredients that go into a beer. So it's to me, it's much more complicated than wine can be. Than what the overview, my limited overview of wine is. And so therefore, I'll tell you this also, the more I understand about what y'all are doing, the better it tastes. I mean, and that's true. I mean, or the more I'm accepting of the taste, because I'll tell you, I wasn't a stout guy till I said, "Okay, Eric, I like this and this and this." And the stout sort of met my flavor profile for what I like.
Yeah, I mean, again, it kind of goes back to that mass-produced thing. And if you have mass-produced stouts all your life and you're used to this kind of creamy but a little bit hollow of a black beer. I mean, that's what you come to expect. And then you taste some, authentic porters and stouts, and again, they have so much malt complexity. I mean, our stout has 7 different malts in it, and they all contribute to a different flavor that comes out in the final product. So, it's more multifaceted than it would have been 15, 20 years ago, and it's more accessible too. If you can't get your hands on things like that, like if you don't live in the UK and in 1995, you're not going to be able to get some of those more complex stouts that and porters that are just beautiful. You're gonna get stuff that's kind of watered down and had to come across the ocean, and who knows what happened to the beer on the trip over, even though it's pasteurized. You're getting beer that's 3 months old at the freshest, probably more like 9 months old. So,
who are you talking about?
Not naming names today.
Well, I'm from Maryland, so
Yeah.
we have a little bit about to say about that.
So what's so to go back to our sheet, Jennifer? The craft brewers
Is she
or
watching?
breweries that
Oh, yeah.
inspire you the most. Craft brewers or breweries that inspire you the most.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's
I'll ponder
a-
that one
that
for a
is
second.
a
I found it
loaded
like a
question.
thought question.
Well, a lot of that really,
It's also it could get me in trouble.
Yeah.
I know.
I think a lot of it depends.
Besides Pretoria Fields.
Besides Pretoria Fields, that's number one always. But it
Yeah.
kind of depends on like the first couple craft beers that you remember.
Oh,
That's-
good point.
That's always
Yeah.
a big thing to me. It's one of
Yeah,
the
how did you get into it? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And those are the first few beers you always like put in the back of your mind that you always, you may go back to it time and time again. It may taste different, but it has a little warm spot in your heart for craft beer.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of mine was Lagunitas IPA. Anything Lagunitas really got me into like that West Coast heavy hopped IPA style. And even Cigar City, they had a espresso stout or espresso porter that tasted just like coffee. So from going from a coffee person to a beer person, it was like the best crossroads because it tasted like coffee, but it was beer. So
That's cool. Not necessarily my favorite beers, but I grew up on Miller Lite because we're down here in South Georgia,
Which is
And,
right here in
which is
Albany, Georgia. There's a
actually
local brew, man.
in Albany, Georgia. And then I moved right outside of Pottsville, Pennsylvania, Pottsville, Pennsylvania, and have been to the Yingling factory. And, just the fact that they've been around since pre-Prohibition, I think is absolutely awesome. So if there's one that's probably one of my favorite from an inspirational and just the fact that they were able to survive all the things that they had to deal with then and come through it and have done very well and make a great beer because I love Yingling.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. So
All right, is this a shout out session?
no, it's just it's just
It can
hey,
be.
it's what comes to your mind, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
sponsor us.
yeah.
No,
Sponsor us.
I remember back forever ago, like Widmer.
Oh yeah.
Oh, nice one.
And
Yeah.
Anchor Steams and, New Belgium. Fat Tire. The first time I had Fat Tire, I was like, holy smokes.
Fat
And
Tire
that
is that beer that like
that was
got
like
a lot of
back
people
in-
in the craft beer.
Oh
in the
yeah.
90s, I was like, holy crap. This is awesome. I've been drinking all this other stuff. What I could afford. I preface that. And let me
Domestic.
tell you what. I still like Miller High Life. I can crush
Oh, Miller High
those.
Life's great beer. Yeah.
I can crush those
doubt.
when I'm fishing. And Coors Banquets.
Mhm.
So, yeah. I mean, that's a shout out to our local brewery.
yeah.
But, yeah.
Hey,
just,
Mo.
yeah. But, yeah, I love with, so, I don't know. I like Reformation up there. I think they do some really cool things with Belgian style beers. They do really neat stuff for new stuff. So, and I agree with what you're saying. You do go back to, the first time you had something that tasted like, I don't know, and you're developing a
Palate.
palate kind of. I mean, I've been helping Sean for
That would be Sean Henley, the numbers guy.
I don't think he's going to watch this podcast long enough to get to this point.
You never know.
So
I
are
hope
the
he's
10,
not down
so
the
are
hall
the 10
there.
people who made this, you can snicker at Sean when you walk by and see him.
Yeah. So, but just the fact that I mean, everybody's palate's different, and I'll tell you what, I've been developing a palate for sour beers, and that goes back to Tripp and I used to go to. We used to go to Athens, and we'd buy a bunch of beer
Yeah.
from a particular brewery
Yeah.
that had a tropical IPA.
First in Georgia.
Yeah, it was
Creature
it was-
Comforts.
Yes, it was, man. And one
Still,
time we
still like it.
picked up, we bought all they had at this one place, and we got a whole case of this other beer that they made called Athena.
Yeah.
And
And I thought it was spoiled.
we were driving back.
I was like, why did
know
you
you were
buy?
gonna be
Why
making
did you
one of
buy
those beers.
this?
Now we were driving back, and I got to a certain point, and we were off the main highway, and I probably shouldn't tell this part.
Of course, neither one of us were driving.
Yeah, of course, yes. And I was like, "Hey, man, you want to taste that other beer?" So we tasted it, and we're like, "Something went horribly wrong with this beer."
So that's my first taste of a Berliner Weiss.
Yeah, and
which
I'll tell
now
you what.
I have a great taste for. I
know,
love
it's
them.
funny how palates develop to the
Yeah.
point where you're like, "Wow!"
And it's an awesome summer beer. It's
Yeah.
awesome when it's hot outside.
yeah.
It's conditions and sun and being by the pool and
Yeah. Oh, good.
yeah, it's like goes down like Gatorade now.
Yeah. It's like, man. And so, but yeah, I think palates are always changing. I don't know. We're outside the norm of what you were used to, and I still get excited. I still drink New Belgian Fat Tires. I mean, to this day, I'm like, it's enjoyable beer.
In fact, that's how we ended up with Wednesday Wing Night, right?
Yeah, I remember that.
All right, Kevin. Now it's turned into your earliest remembrance of craft beer.
Jeez, I don't know how much time we got. I already
We're almost
mentioned,
done. You're good.
I already mentioned Dogfish Head. I mean, that was, especially in the Mid-Atlantic, I mean, that was just such a boon to the craft beer scene that, those guys cannot be appreciated enough with how experimental they were, even back in the 90s. For a brewery that got their start off of a pumpkin beer, and seeing the industry come full circle on that is pretty neat. But they do all kinds of crazy stuff. One of my favorite beers from them was actually a lobster stout where they put live lobsters in the boil. It was pretty wild, but
Those lobsters are all safe. They're all accounted.
No lobsters were injured
No
in the
lobsters.
making of this podcast.
Oh, they were, and they were the lobsters are delicious too. They serve them at their facility as well. But
That's awesome.
So they weren't safe.
They weren't. Yeah, they're actually delicious.
They were tasty.
yeah, but kind of more along our lines. Huge fans of Fauna Flora. Everything they do is just awesome, and especially with having a chance to go out and see their farm facility and what they're doing with their barrel aging and their wild ale program is really inspirational. Burial out there as well in Asheville. Creature Comforts, they're somebody that you want to emulate, especially as we expand and get bigger. They expanded tremendously, and they've been able to keep their same quality. So that's really something that I want to emulate as well. And then Anchor Steam. I made steam beers probably every other batch of homebrew that I made for the first 3 or 4 years.
Which means you like to drink them.
Oh yeah. They're That's
Your home beer is what you consume.
That's something that I've been waiting on for the right moment. I'd love to make that beer commercially, but I need to do that beer really right. So we'll wait on that for a little while.
Very cool.
And then there's some brewers out there that I haven't even had their beer that inspire me. Like Rare Barrel and Cellar Maker out in San Francisco are just doing some really interesting stuff. And obviously they don't distribute down here to Southwest Georgia, but you hear about these things, and they're really open about everything that they do and their processes. So it's inspirational. And I got to take everybody's word that they're great beers. I believe it, but I just haven't been able to get out west and really go after them yet.
Yeah, one of my favorites was speaking of and thinking about it was Burial Beer Company in Asheville, and they do a lot with not much, and I assume that's their big facility, which is just that tap room downtown, which they do with voters, and they have some awesome beers.
Yeah, they've expanded a little bit too, but they're staying local to North Carolina, and we share a malt store with them, so that's pretty cool, and kind of gives us a little bit of a sense of
camaraderie, together,
and knowing that we can send our grains up to the maltster and they're going to come back, perfect.
Yeah, that's true. So we've been going about an hour. Let's finish up with some easy stuff, softballs. So what are the best parts of your guys' jobs, and what are the worst parts? Maybe not even talk about the worst, but what are the best parts of you guys' jobs? I don't know why worst parts. Difficult aspects.
There you
Sorry.
go. There you go.
I've been drinking.
I that's probably the most difficult aspect is drinking all the beer that we produce. I've still got a fridge full. I can't get through it.
Same. It's like a whole flat at the house.
Yeah. But,
the best aspect is also drinking all the beer.
Exactly. No, I mean, I wouldn't be doing this if it didn't make me happy to be in the brewery, and not only being in the brewery but also talking about beer and drinking beer with other beer lovers. That's I'm glad I found this industry, and it kind of cheesy, but I can't say anything bad about my job. It's great.
That's awesome. From your boss's perspective. Collin, do you have anything bad to say about your job?
Actually, no, not at all. This is probably one of the first.
Because Kevin didn't have anything bad to say about his job.
No, not at all. This is actually probably one of the first jobs I've had in a long time where I generally don't mind working the hours that I do and put in what I do. I actually go home at the end of the day and feel like I've, even if I've done nothing, it feels like I've done something. But one of the highlights of this world that we're in, me being taproom manager, is all the faces I see. Some are every week, every weekend, 2 or 3 times a weekend. Some are once a month. And then you have the people that travel to see us.
Ambassador for the Southwest Georgia. That's right.
And have people from Atlanta, Alabama, Florida. Actually, earlier this week, we had a gentleman at Riff Raff Brewery over around the Colorado area who was on a road trip for vacation.
Nice.
He took a road trip from Colorado all the way down to Key West for the winter and was making his way back up, and he actually stopped here.
Yeah.
He said, I think he said this is about his 84th brewery that he went to.
Oh, nice.
So, but it's just things like that, the people you get to see all the time, the people you get to meet, and it's you're part of the community. I go out and see people all the time, and checking on them, see how they're doing in life. It's like I haven't seen you in a couple weeks. Come back down to the brewery. But it's a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun here.
Yeah.
Do I get to answer that question?
If you want to, feel free.
Well, this is actually my second job. First job's professional.
Massage therapist.
I was thinking fly fishing guide.
Fly fishing guide.
As long as I'm making shit up.
In your thumbs up massage therapy. No,
I own a small spa on the interstate.
I thought that was right.
That's horrible.
That's horrible. Yeah, awesome. So we've been about an hour. My favorite job is, or my best part of my job is working with these guys, and that really is it. The people that we work with make everything that make all of it possible, and they make all the beer possible, and they make the tap room run like it's supposed to, and they make downtown a little bit better. So come out and support Collin and Kevin. And that is the end of this episode. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Right on tuning in.